What's going on, guys? Ben here with Strong Insurance. Today we are going to discuss some licenses and permits that you need to get your trucking company started. Some of these licenses and permits will not apply to you. Some of them will only apply to certain individuals depending on what their cargo is and what they're hauling. But for the most part, we're going to go through the required stuff and some other licenses and permits that are maybe not required in every situation. So right out of the gate, we're going to start with your US DOT. This is required by any commercial vehicle operating over 10,000 gross vehicle weight rating. This tracks your safety, compliance, things like that through the FMCSA. Now, as far as getting your US DOT, there's multiple ways to go about that. You can go out and find a TPA, a third-party administrator, that will do it for you. Or just as easy, in my opinion, you can go out and you can do this yourself. Right on the FMCSA website, you can apply for your DOT and get that yourself. If you can do that, if you're technologically savvy enough to go out and get online and apply for it online and go that route, I highly advise it. Avoid the unnecessary fees of using a third-party administrator. Once you have your DOT, we're going to move on to your operating authority or your MC number. This is what you need in order to haul across state lines. Now, if you're intrastate only, there's intrastate and interstate. Interstate is crossing state lines. Intrastate is inside a single state, not crossing any other state lines. If you're interstate, which most of our guys are, you are going to need your MC number and your authority. Any commodities or passengers for a fee, you're going to need that. If you're involved in any interstate commerce as a motor carrier, you're going to need that. So it's relatively simple to do as well. You have a filing fee here of $300 to get that done. That's as of today. That always changes. So if you're watching this video at a later date, it could be a different amount, but it is a non-refundable $300 to get your MC authority. After you have your MC, there's a bunch of different ways you can go here. Right out of the gate, another one that you could look at is your UCR. UCR helps fund safety programs and protects the public interest in the trucking industry. It's there to ensure that you have adequate insurance coverage. It's relatively simple filing as well. So getting your UCR can be relatively easy. So go out and get that done. You can also look at your IRP, your International Registration Plan. This is operating across multiple state lines, or into Canada, anything like that. It simplifies vehicle registration for fleets, especially for fleets is where we see the IRP that are in multiple regions and things like that. Maybe you've got terminals in the southeast, but you also have terminals out in the Midwest. It allows you to stay in compliance with each state and provincial regulations if you're crossing into Canada, which, like I say, a lot of people that doesn't apply to. And if you're a smaller operation, your IRP is probably less important. But if you've got trucks all over the country, you want to simplify making sure that you can have a single license plate with apportioning fees based on the mileage traveled in each jurisdiction, rather than some of the other ways you have to go about that. So the next one we're going to look at is IFTAs. This is going to be anyone over 26,000 pounds is going to need, gross vehicle weight rating is going to need to have IFTAs filed. This is an international fuel tax agreement. It's going to track the amount of miles that you drive in each state, and then you submit a quarterly report to pay taxes. So anything over 26,000 pounds, any trucks that have 3 or more axles are going to be required to file IFTA filings if you're crossing state lines. I would highly advise that you keep that stuff accurate. From an insurance standpoint, it's really important. For example, if you are a California-based company and you're not properly filing your IFTAs, it's going to look like you're only driving in California. Nowadays, many insurance companies would like to see that 40% of your operation is actually outside of the state of California. It used to be that they wanted you to be intrastate as much as possible in almost every scenario. Nowadays, they want you getting out of California, and you can show that you're getting out of California by having properly filed IFTAs, whether you're regularly in Utah, New Mexico, Arizona. We see the same thing with Florida. These insurance companies anymore, they prefer that if you're a Florida-based company, you're actually OTR and you're getting out of Florida as much as possible. nuclear lawsuits in those two states are through the roof. There's obviously some other states that we see the same issues, but those two states come to mind when I think about why IFTA filings can be so important. Obviously, to start all of this, if you're driving over 26,000 pounds, you're going to need your CDL. So obviously go get your CDL, go through the training. They've made it a little bit more difficult over the last 24, 36 months to get your CDL than it was, say, 4 or 5 years ago. And then if depending on what it is that you're hauling, there's different endorsements on your CDL. You can get your H hazmat, you can get your N for tanker hauling. And then if you're hauling any double, triple configurations, you're going to need your T endorsement. So those are obviously a given. You're going to need that CDL if you're operating over 26,000 pounds. And then some additional licenses and permits that are going to apply to a smaller community of folks watching this video are going to be your HVUT, your heavy use tax. This is a IRS filing by filing 2290. This is filed annually, and then, proof of payment is often required for vehicle registration renewals. This is only going to apply to those operating vehicles weighing 55,000 pounds or higher. So if you're in that category, check out the HVUT. You're going to need those as well. And then when it comes to the states that you're in, there are certain states that have different regulations. This does not apply to all states. For example, in Texas, you have to get a TX USDOT or a TX DOT down in Texas, which in a lot of states, you don't have to have a specific state DOT. So definitely check into your specific state requirements. Iowa, I know, has a little bit of different things. Texas has a little bit of different things. So depending on what state you're in, definitely look into what's required specific to your state. And then anytime that you're hauling oversized or overweight, there's a lot of times you're going to need either a trip permit to get through a certain state. It just kind of depends on the state. I know Ohio's really big on this. Kentucky's really big on this. So making sure that if you're oversized or overweight and you know it, and if you don't know it, you should. But if you're oversized, overweight, check your route that you're going to go with that load and make sure you have proper permits to get through those states with no issues. It's a big one. It looks horrible to the insurance companies when you get violations for this, and it dings your company overall. So definitely be double checking your oversized, overweight permits and the routes you're going to take. And then lastly, we will cover the insurance requirements in order to get a lot of these filings and licensures and permits and things like that. With the FMCSA, you're going to need a minimum of $750,000 worth of primary auto liability coverage. Traditionally, we go straight to $1 million because as soon as you try to work with a broker or a shipper, 95% of those guys are going to require you to have $1 million anyway. So you can go get the 750, but within the first 3 weeks of, when you book your first load, we're going to have to bump it to $1 million anyways. So unless you're aging an authority, we can do it at 750, or if you have direct shipper contracts and they're not requiring $1 million, you could get away with 750. But in most cases, we go straight to $1 million. Obviously, you're going to need your cargo coverage. Generally speaking, most brokers and shippers, they're going to require 100,000. And then general liability. That one's not really required as much, but is one that we highly recommend. This is going to be anything that happens liability wise when the wheels aren't turning. So if you're unloading a load, or let's say you're strapping down a load, for example, and you're ratcheting down a strap, and that ratchet strap snaps and sends your hook 100 yards across a parking lot and smokes a dock worker in the head and hurts them, kills them, God forbid. That's going to be general liability. If you have a terminal or an office location and someone's walking into that office location, slips and falls and breaks their arm, their leg, whatever, on some snow or slips on a sidewalk crack or anything like that, that's going to be general liability. So those are going to be many of the permits and licensures that you're going to need to start your trucking company. Like I say, really important, check your state, because each state does have, or I shouldn't say each state, many states have specific requirements and licensures that they require that maybe are not required federally. So if you want to continue to learn more about the trucking insurance industry or the trucking industry as a whole, give us a like, give us a follow, and as always, keep it rubber side down.